Welcome everyone to the SQL Server Access Group at AccessUserGroups.org. I am your host for this evening. My name is Juan Soto. I'm Microsoft Access MVP now 14 years in a row. And we meet every second Tuesday of the month. If you're seeing this on YouTube, we'd love to have you live. You can see the schedule, not just this group, but other groups at AccessUserGroups.org and click on the calendar tab. And while you're there, check out the other groups we have, such as Access Pacific, Access Lunchtime, Access Beginners, which is another another group I host. We also have another new English chapter, Access Australia. And if you are Italian, we welcome you to join us at Access Italiano. So, a couple of things before I introduce our speaker for today. We are a week away from Microsoft Ignite. And if you haven't registered yet, I do recommend you go to ignite.microsoft.com and register for the online version, which is free. What's interesting to me is this is the first time in a long time, if ever, they've come to Chicago for the event. Usually they hold it in Florida or some warm place. So it sold out in 2 days. I mean, I was debating about paying for it, and before I knew it was sold out, but I was able to get a hosting gig. So I'll be at Ignite next week at McCormick Place. So if you are there, please do a shout out at my Twitter handle, jsoto22, or you can email me at jsoto@itimpact.com, and I'll let you know where I'm at. We can catch up. When you're at Microsoft Ignite, I do recommend you go through all the sessions and you book sessions in their catalog and you overbook. Like, for example, there's so many sessions going on at the same hour. I'll typically book 2 or 3 sessions in the same hour. And the reason I do that is sometimes I'll go to my first session, my first choice. I don't like the speaker. I don't like how the topic is going on. I don't like the vibe. I realized it wasn't for me. And so I can check my calendar to see what other topic is going on at the same time, and I'll go to my second choice. And then sometimes halfway through that, I'll switch and I'll go to my third choice. So please consider registering for Ignite. It's free, and hopefully you guys, a lot of AI, by the way, lots of AI this time around with Microsoft Ignite. So if you're into AI like I am, big time, and the stuff I see coming down the pike for AI is blowing me away. I think it behooves all of you to check out Ignite and check out some sessions. And then the nice thing is you can watch those sessions after the fact and be able to participate. All right. So tonight we got a special treat. I have Steve Owen as our guest. He will be presenting on how to initiate shutdowns remotely. Steve, who actually works at IT Impact as a senior access consultant, many years of access. He was actually a tester, I believe, right, Steve, on Access? One of the first versions of Access, you were testing it?
Yeah, we were an alpha tester for the first version of Access.
There you go. So the man was there at the beginning. I wasn't even in the beginning. I came from Paradox for DOS and then Paradox for Windows, and then finally I got the Access bug. So that's a topic for another day. But Steve currently has multiple interesting projects. One of his latest projects is a toy warehouse here in Illinois that uses Access to manage the entire warehouse. Isn't that right, Steve?
That's correct. And I'm going to kind of go through some of their databases and their backend databases in this presentation and the purpose of why we are using this.
All right, Steve. So I will answer any questions and monitor the waiting room and take it away.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Not yet.
Okay, I'm not much into PowerPoints, but I wanted to keep on task and I'm planning for this. So I put together a little PowerPoint. I'm going to primarily be focusing on the demoing side of it. But what I'm here to talk about is how to manage users and get them out of the front end applications which is preventing us from doing maintenance on the back end applications. There are some tools out there that sort of simplify this. FMS has the agent, which allows for compacting and repairing of backends. But if somebody has that backend locked, it fails. They also have a tool called FMS Admin, which monitors. It allows you to see who's locking the backend, but it has some quasi kick out capabilities, but it's really looking for downtime. And many of our applications don't really have downtime, as well as I do not want to kick anybody out of an application without giving them a heads up and a grace period to gracefully close out of their system. Click this on. So basically, I'm just going to go through a simple introduction of what the application is, some of the key features, how it works. Then I'm going to do a full demonstration so we can watch it close people down and close things down. Give you an overview of the implementation and the requirements, how to implement this strategy, because we're actually doing it from both a back-end scheduler as well as a front-end monitor, so that every application has to have 3 elements tied into it in order to provide this feature to monitor that application and to allow for people to be kicked out and to close down gracefully. And then we'll conclude with a Q&A and if there are any discussions. So the primary problem when dealing with any access and backends, and I've seen this many times, where people are running around trying to get people out of the application so they can do an update, or they can compact and repair the database, or any other of those types of scenarios. In this case, and in many cases, especially in the warehouse management realm, it becomes very difficult to scan or span all the users and go in and if a user gets up, goes out to lunch, leaves the system open, now you got to walk around thousands of square feet in order to shut down all the applications. And by the time you do that, someone probably got in underneath you from one of the other workstations. We have this situation. We have a current client that's a major warehouse system. The application was homegrown and built over many years, and they've got several front-end applications, which I see quite common in the warehouse arena, where there are many front-end applications that point and share links to many back-end data stores. So this is very common from what I've seen in the warehouse arena. Probably the most prevalent that I have seen, where we need to do maintenance on the back end, and notifying many users across many applications becomes difficult. So really our target audience is to really the database administrators, allowing them to do the work that they need to do. In this particular application that we're working on currently, they're having major corruption issues. The database isn't well designed. Some of the pieces are on a shaky network. So a couple times a week, they have to kick people out and go through and recompile many of the backend databases. And they do this manually, and it puts people down for far too long. So what our goal here is to have this thing run at night, gracefully kick everybody off the system, use the FMS agent to compact and repair those databases. And then in the morning when they come back in, they should everything should be back and optimal. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts and comments? Okay. So this is what we were looking at in this particular implementation that we are dealing with. What you see across the top, that represents all of the front-end databases. What you see on the left-hand row level over there, that represents all the back-end databases. You can ignore the XLSs. This is a cumulative view of all the different data sources they look at. But as you can see, we've got, I believe, 10 front-end databases and close to double that amount of back-end databases. So many of the check marks represent which database is used for which front end. So you can see Access Data has 2 and all these different check marks. One in particular oops, sorry about that. One in particular is this one in the middle called the sheet line item one, and that's used across almost all of them. That's one of them that is getting a lot of corruption. So in order for us to do any work on that, we have to close down all of the applications to which is being utilized then. I basically illustrated or discussed already the catalyst for building the utility. So I'm going to just go right down to the next one here. What are the key features of this utility? It's really made up of two segments, two key applications. One is the scheduler, which is basically it's nothing more than a standalone access application to which an administrator can go in and create a schedule. He can associate it to a single application front end, or he can have it apply to all front ends that are being monitored. So he can isolate certain databases if need be to have it closed down for a period of time. Or he can say, I want all the applications to close down so I can do work on all of the backend databases. The second component is actually the implementation of the monitor. And that's nothing more than a simple form that you load into the application along with a few tables, link tables. And a profile or a profile table, which allows you to tweak how often you want it to check for notifications, how long of a grace period you want to provide them. You can configure all of that. So you may say, I want to, whenever we get a notification that this thing is going down, I want to give them 5 minutes to go through whatever they were doing, save all their data, save the records, and move on and close down. What happens in the application while they're working, if a alert hits that say this thing's shutting down, it then becomes visible. Normally, when you load it into the application, the form is invisible. It just monitors in the background. They don't even know that it's there until an event is triggered based on what the administrator set up. And then it will become visible. It will provide them with a message to which the scheduler outlines. So the person writing the event to close down can write a custom notification in there, tell them whatever, and then it says, hey, you've got X amount of minutes to close out of the system. Please save your work and move on. Okay, I'm going to load up the applications. The screen on your right is the scheduler. It's a standalone application. It's all access. It provides the administrator the ability to create any number of schedules to which they want. It also allows the administrator, so for every front end application, basically you just provide the name here. So in the case on the left, that application is actually called autoclose_example. If I had 15 different front ends, basically it's the name of the database, the front end database, without the ACCDB or MDB or whatever it happens to be. That's all we care about. I remove out the extension when I'm checking. So this just provides the general list of all the front end applications to which you would want that are currently being monitored. I do provide a database log. So part of the loading of this form, it's actually writing into this table what machine it is, what the network user name is, the database, and then the start time. So now whenever this thing closes out, and I'm going to close it out now, and real quick, just so that you can see, it will then go through and provide. Make sure I close out. Second. I'll put it there. So it keeps track of who's logging in and who's logging out. Now that works out well when you're dealing with, if you want to see what users are currently logged into the system. There are other tools you can use that will look at the lock file and it'll give you the machine name, but it doesn't necessarily give you who the logged in username is. So if you're in an RDP situation, you'll see the machine name, but you won't see the username in the lock file. So now while this thing is up and running, at any time here, the administrator can come in and add new entries in here. All I did here is I flagged this to be active. So now the next time that this thing, I gotta set the proper date here. So now the next time this thing checks, we get the message, and the message that is provided in here is that of the notification text. It tells you that this thing is going to shut down. And for the sake of this meeting, I made it so it shuts down immediately. So I'm going to load this back up real quick. Now, what happens? So on the other side of this thing, when we auto load this, let me load it back up. We don't want people coming in and trying to load the application up again. So the first thing that happens when we load the application, it says, hey, are we in the block range? If we are, tell them you can't load the application and gracefully shut down. So that's the meat of it. But how we configure that is in the scheduler, we can actually associate at any time. This would be a listing of all the databases that we have and we utilize the front end for that we want to monitor. We can come in here and put in any text we want to put in. Then we provided a schedule start date and time. If you exclude the date, this becomes a recurring event, meaning it's going to happen at 1 a.m. at night and it's going to conclude at 1:30 a.m. in the morning. So this way, if you have standard processes that you want to do every night, you don't have to play games with coming in here and hardwiring the actual date. You can just put a time in there and you can move on from there. I do provide some little, I don't like to type too much, especially dates and times. So I just provided some quick and easy drop down that will autofill today's date, defaults it to a duration of 30 minutes. If you change this, I only go up to 120 minutes, but if you change it to 15 minutes, this date changes accordingly. Now, none of this will go into effect, and I do provide a warning that says, hey, this thing is deactivated. Don't think it's on, because I can see these people coming in here, setting these up, closing it down, and never activating the actual event. So I just wanted to make sure that they're clear on that and they're okay with that. Are there any questions to this point?
Right now, I don't see any questions in chat. So if you want to, you can also chat. Let us, if you have any questions, go ahead, unmute your mic if you're not muted and let us know. I don't think we have any questions right now, so.
Okay. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to turn another one of these things on. Actually, I'm going to shut her down. I'm going to show you how to configure the application. What does it take? The one thing I personally wanted to do was make this minimally intrusive. I didn't want to have a lot of artifacts going into all these applications because one, I have to put them there. But two, it makes more sense to keep this self-contained as possible. So all you need in this is the preferences. And all the preferences is a way to say for this application, I want to check every roughly 20 seconds. I want to check the event log, and then I'm giving them this isn't really seconds. This really is like 15% of a minute. So I want to check this about very, very quickly. So in this case here, if we did, if we could actually put this at 0.5, so it'd be roughly 30 seconds. And then next time we load this thing up, shut her down, load her back up. So now it's going to take roughly 30, every 30 seconds, it's going to go out to that log. One thing I don't like to do is, for a couple of reasons, one selfish, is I don't like to have the timer too quick, because if you're also working in code and you forget to close that thing down, it messes with you as you're typing ahead and everything else. So I would generally probably put this thing at about a minute to 2 minutes. I don't think anything's that critical. But basically what will happen now is every half a minute or so, it will go out and do a check. I'm going to turn on one of these values here, one of these scheduled events. And as I do that, so there's not a lot of properties, whether you have an active property or not. If you don't have an active property, what's going to happen is it's going to use defaults. So you don't have to fill that value in. The other thing that this thing does, and which is sort of crucial here, let me close this out. This is going to go down. Apologize there. Is if the user is in the middle of an application, and I built some sample data entry in here, and they're in here and they're typing away and they're going to town. When this thing hits, and I'm going to turn it back on, it is going to undo those changes. So if the user has gone in, created a new record, or started to edit a record, and they don't get back by time the grace period hits, that record will be undone. Now, we couldn't do any type of saves or anything like that because it could invalidate the record. One of the things, if they are allowed into editing tables and they're editing a table directly and they have not completed the full validation required fields in that, this thing will stop. There's no way for me to auto exit out of this thing without them correcting that action. Not within the access do command dot quit. It will, if it causes a data validation error at the table level, it stops the process. So most of our applications, no one's ever allowed into a table. And hopefully they're not doing that. Let me see what we got here. Oh, I didn't save it. So right now it will go through and on before this thing closes out, it will undo no matter where that record is. It's cycling through every form, every sub form, every sub form, as far down as it can go, as far down as you can go. It's going to find any unchanged record and it's going to auto undo it at that point.
So if there's a subform on that thing, it's also going to cycle through the subforms on that form as well.
Absolutely. So a good example here, if I came into, let me reload it back up. Let me shut this off. Load it back up. I'm going to do one thing here real quick. I'm going to change this to being back to 0.15 because I'm a very impatient person. And close that down. So now I'm gonna turn this thing on, and I've got a sample form like that. So if I come into this form here and I come down to here, so now I'm 2 levels down. I can be 3 levels down, and I'm gonna just type in here, hello darkness, my old friend. Okay, I'm gonna delete that. Now I'm gonna set this element back on. See how it's going. Okay, so let's see. Oh, it's right here. So it turned it back to hello darkness, my old friend, and then it closed it down. So it'll go down as many levels as you want to go down. It's a recursive call all the way down, checking for subforms and subcontrols and all of that.
What is the line of code that you use to undo any record edits or saves?
Oh,
Record edits, pending record, edits, records are in the middle of being saved. How do you undo that? With what line of code?
no, 1 second here.
Yeah, I believe it's a single line that you can use.
It is a single line. Well, you have to go through and find out if it's dirty or not.
So you're checking to see if me.dirty, then
Yep.
undo the undo. Me.undo.
Yeah, 1 second here. Let's find it. Okay, undo dirty form. So it's going at the top level, seeing if the form is visible, then it's for every form that's open at the highest level, it's going through and calling this form. Then it's passing it and recalling itself. If at any point it is dirty, actually at this point, oh, if dirty, so it's checking the current form, whichever form we recursively called. If it's dirty, it's undoing it. Then it's going through and cycling through all the controls that we have in that form. And if there is a control of a subform, then it's calling itself. It's recursively calling this, and then it'll undo that all the way down the chain. You only got one level. The one thing this doesn't do, I tend to build a lot of complex documents. And when I say a document, I don't look at Access as a bunch of records and details. I look at an invoice as an invoice. I don't care if you post that record. I don't even do validation checking at that record until you submit it. Once you submit it, I look at it as a whole because record by record doesn't mean anything to me. That whole document means something to me. An invoice means something to me. I may have a validation that says this type of invoice has to have these types of line items. There's no way in the world for you to automate that check. Now, this sort of breaks that, but it doesn't, because as soon as you edit it, I automatically turn the master document into draft mode. So that won't change. It'll still be in draft mode, and they can't submit it to being saved until they go back into that invoice and say submit, which would then validate everything and say, now we're no longer in draft mode, it is saved, it's valid. Those types of, because I mean, working record by record and posting by posting, I like the batch look. I like a web where I can grab the data, play with the data, then I can undo the data and all that kind of fun stuff without having to worry about that I saved one line item and go on from there. But
Yeah.
this process itself will obviously just keep it as in draft mode, and when they come back in, they would have to do their necessary validation from there.
Very good.
So just as far as all of this is fairly well documented. The only objects you need in your monitored application is three things. You need the preference you need a link into the other database, into the scheduler database. I did that for performance reasons. I know I was loading the database up with code and managing it that way at one point. And because of the frequencies of calls and loading and unloading and so on, I'm like, I'm just going to link them in. It's a cheap solution. And then the form itself.
Very nice.
Like I said, the only real considerations and what happens during batch processing. So if you have a process that you're running and it goes through 20 steps, could this break it if you're not checking for those steps? So let's say you load data, and because that timer event is going to be running, it does release power back to the environment. It's going to trip. And then you start another big process. You could break that. So you have to be cognizant when you're dealing with this, that if you got any huge batch processes that is being done unmonitored, and remember, we have several applications that are unstaffed. And their primary purpose is to keep looking at a folder. And once there's data in that folder, start the process in. I think you're going to have to put some hooks in there to stop and to pause the monitor, so that you don't break mid-load your application. But that's really it. And the majority, 70% of the processes, this should be able to handle.
All right. Thank you very much, Steve. Very informative. I believe we do have people who might have questions. We'll open up the questions now. Ben, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Okay. So I have code like this that I inherited from one of my first projects, and I've kept it in all my applications have it, where it has a timer event and it checks every so often for a table to have a value in it to know whether it, shut down time.
Yeah.
But it's not real effective at closing the database. And I always suspected it was because maybe they had a dialogue open, but I don't think that many people walk away from their desk with a dialogue open. So if there's an unsaved record, the application.quit, does it fail? Do you have to do the undo for this to be effective?
No, you don't. But what you stand the chance of if you don't undo it is having a table level validation error. Then it's broken. So, like, let's say I have an invoice and I have to put a product in there, right? But I started to load that invoice and I put in some information. I haven't selected product yet. Now, if I try to move off that record, you're going to get a notification that says, hey, you can't move off this record. Then you got a problem, because if you don't undo it where it won't cause that table level validation or even your validation in the code, you may prevent a form from closing. So if you say on the unload, cancel, this thing will also break. It won't break, it won't work, right? So if there are any of those in your code or that code you inherited where they're expecting a certain flow or process for the on unload event for the form, then that's going to take precedence, and that thing will not close down.
Okay.
Now, it's interesting though what you're saying. If a dialog box is open, will it close? Maybe not, because if it's modal, is that back end event even triggering? I don't know that. I'll have to test that. So you follow what I'm saying? If you
does a timer event trigger when there's a modal form open? I guess would be the question.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. And I don't know the answer. Like I said, this is what I would call an MVP, a minimally viable product at this point, right? We're working through it, but that's a darn good point. Now the question becomes is, can I Well, we would never know that event occurred if a modal dialog is open and there's no do events or anything along those lines, which would allow it to run in the background. So that may be a caveat as well. I don't know why it's happening in your particular application. Do you notice this regularly in some application versus others, or?
I suspect that most cases users just reading data from forms and then
Mhm.
they walk away from their desk. I wouldn't think users would typically be halfway entering a record and walking away.
I agree. That's why I'm saying the majority of the time. Now, what happens, and that's also one of the reasons why in the scheduler I put in that viewer, so the administrator can see who hasn't cleared out yet. And so if there are anomalies like that, they can look at it as long as they know who the user is based off of their network, as well as maybe the machine name, then they should be able to identify that and say, hey, don't be doing that, or whatever. It's not 100% foolproof, but it's one of the safest methods out there that I have seen. I'm not 100% sure. I know that, like I said, FMS agent or FMS admin monitors the log files. That's about all it does. It does have some rudimentary ways of breaking that log file based on inactivity. But I'm really not, I really don't want to do that because that really kills out a user. The client now, you know what they do? They go in and unplug the network. We're going to certainly find the anomalies. There's no doubt about it. But I've ran through many checks. The only check I haven't run through in my samples there is what if we had a modal dialog open, as well as a message box. So if there is a hanging message box, and that's a potential problem. If the timer works, even if it's a modal dialog, then it's easy enough to cycle through there and close those out. But my guess is everything is frozen in time at that point.
That's what someone posted in the chat.
Oh, they did, yeah.
Yeah, Bones made that statement. Time will not fire. All right. Good question, Ben. Are you thinking about trying this code then to see if it works for you, or is it very similar to what you already use?
Well, it would require me opening up all the applications I've already deployed. I don't need a centralized way to manage it. Typically, I've been using this code since 2002. Typically, I don't have a scheduled downtime. I I use it when I need to do maintenance, so I need to kick people out immediately. Sometimes I just wait till late at night, and then when late at night when they're still in it, then I try to force it, and that's when I get stuck because it doesn't always kick people out.
Okay.
It's a frustrating thing. I did write a little utility that'll read the LDB file and then look up the computers that are in there and then tell me the names of the people who are on those computers so I can kind of track down the person I need to make the phone call to sell them to get out of the database.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why I put that user log in the system so you don't have to. Because again, it's tied directly, I believe, to the machine name. I'm not sure.
Right.
It's
Now,
not.
the problem is the LDB file or LACCDB. If you have 5 people in the database and 4 of them leave, that doesn't mean there's one computer name listed in there. It'll still have some of the other computer names still listed in it.
Yeah, and there's a way, and I think that's how FMS admin works. It's looking for active connections somehow. I don't know what it's doing, probably some low level stuff. But again, you can't break it no matter what. If they have an active connection, there's no way they can break that.
Right. I'll have to call the IT administrator and have them kill the
User.
connection.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So, like I said, this is looking to handle 75 to 80% of the instances on regular basis. And you're 100% a long running query. That's okay. I don't care about that because it's still tripped. It'll still be tripped when that thing is done, and then that process will occur. But again, if I've got 15 long running queries, I don't want it to stop at 10. So that is one place where I would write some additional code in there to allow that to complete before the trigger fires to kill them out, because I don't want to go clean up data after they're done. That's not my point is to give this to them, let them do their job, and I don't have to hunt around on why they couldn't close down their databases or fix their compacted repair process. I go by a motto that I'm lazy, but I work hard at being lazy.
Are you only compacting the back end or the front end?
Back ends.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're using FMS agent for that. I'm not dealing with that.
Okay.
So we schedule the agent to do all of that at 3 in the morning. Well, we will at 3 in the morning for all their troubled databases. And then we have to use that matrix to see which front ends, or just have them all closed down. We don't care. One problem we do have that you may have is when you have a unstaffed database, and it's sitting on an RDP somewhere, or it's sitting somewhere. How do we reload that? So because it's unstaffed, they don't want to have to reload it. So I'm working with the network guy to come up with a Windows task to reboot that machine and have that auto start on the reboot.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I don't want to work. I don't want to have a task that just loads it, because you get the problem of multiple instances loaded. I don't want to deal with any of that. So if we can just do a clean reboot task at 4 a.m., let that thing run and let her go.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions for Steve here before we go? Comments? You guys like the presentation?
Yes, I appreciate seeing this after all the years of having a system like this that I didn't build myself. I think it was Gary Robison that wrote it in Australia.
Yeah,
So it's nice to
Gary's
see
retired
someone
now.
else do it.
And it's funny because it always seems to be the damn warehouse systems. I can name 3 of them where I came up with a solution similar, not as sophisticated. You drop a file into a directory and it kicks them out. I had to do that for a fabrication warehouse down in Ladd, Illinois. And that's how we did it. They had a big warehouse and people weren't getting out of it, and they were having corruption problems. So you dropped a file. The lady who managed it would drop a file, it would kick them out, and they wouldn't let them back in until that file was removed.
Clever way of doing it. I've currently got an issue with Access running on my network that I'd like to talk about, but I don't want to, I don't know if
The
one wants to
floor
start
is yours,
recording first or
Ben. Go ahead, have at it. Tell us what your issue is.
what. Okay. We have about 20 Access applications with a front end, back end for different projects. I'll say there's 4 different applications, but there's like 20 total. And we're running in a Citrix environment. So everybody is using the same version of Windows, the same version of Access. And this has been running for years like this. But recently, we started having this happen across all of the applications where people are in the database, multiple users, and typically it's like 5 users. It's not a heavy load, but something happens where the LDB file disappears and everybody's still able to use the database. They didn't get kicked out, but now it's in a read-only mode. And I'm unable to delete the backend file or rename the backend file. The solution has been either have everybody exit the database or call IT and have them delete the lock on that file. And once everyone's out of that file, anyone can get back in and it's back to normal again. We went through a period in October where this was happening about once a week, maybe twice a week.
You're saying the LDB, I'm going to use LDB because I don't like to use that
Yep.
long one. You're saying the LDB goes away, people are still in it, and then it reappears.
No, it doesn't reappear until everyone has left it, and then they log in again.
I don't know how you can do that. It's got to be something at the low level network arena, because there's no way to man, even as an administrator, I don't know what they're doing to kill that thing. Because
So it's
that
as if someone's opening it in what do you call that mode where you have full access? Exclusive.
Exclusive.
Yeah, it's like it's being open exclusive, but
But the LDB file itself is deleted.
the LDB file is gone. You're correct.
it'll still be there if you're in exclusive mode. That's how it manages.
It doesn't get created when you're in exclusive mode. I don't
Oh,
think.
it doesn't.
Honestly, it's because of issues like that. I rarely do a Access backend anymore. You usually use SQL Server Express or SQL Server. I believe what you're describing is a known bug in Access, and I'm surprised it's taken this long for it to bite you, where you have that issue. George, is that the known bug that we've been hearing about, where if you have an Access backend on a network, it'll stop working after a while?
I don't remember that part of it. I know there was a period of time where there was a locking bug, but I don't remember it deleting the LDB.
That's a network level lock.
We opened a ticket with Microsoft on this, and as soon as they heard the word Citrix, they said, "Oh, it's out of our. We can't address it because it's not running on our infrastructure. Maybe Citrix is doing something wrong," which is silly because Citrix doesn't have any more power over the the file system.
That sounds like an easy out.
Yes, I was disappointed by that statement they made. They said if we can reproduce it by only using RDP, then they would come back and look at it. But we don't have our users, running RDP sessions, and I can't make this happen on demand.
And there's no plans to move it to SQL Server backend?
Well, I got 4 applications. Are you running a discount right now, Ron? 4 for 1?
I am doing a discount. I'm glad you mentioned it. Thank you, Ben. We are 30 years young this year in IT Impact, and it so happens we are running a 30% off special. So please take advantage. If you've been waiting for the right time to do a project with IT Impact, now's your time. Now's your chance.
And why couldn't, and just my curiosity, you've got 3 applications, you say?
There's some smaller applications that don't get used as often.
Okay, so do they share data with the bigger applications?
No.
Okay. Did they experience those locks?
Yes, every one of the applications we have running has had it happen at least once. So that's a lot of rewriting.
Well, it's fun. This whole thing that I just demoed is going to go away because they're looking to go to SQL. So like, but they got to go through their busy signal or their busy season before that gets done. So I don't want to spend their busy season of my time doing all their hard work.
Yeah. I think if we were to rewrite the apps, they might just decide to, switch over to a new platform.
Hey, Ben,
Yes.
have you been able to isolate the users who were connected at the time that it happens? To see if there's a pattern there where, if Joe is connected, it happens, but not.
Yeah, we started tracking that and we didn't find any patterns. It's happened to me and it's happened to another developer, Chris Kleiner. I don't know if he's still online here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't found any pattern. So what we did to fix it, it plagued us for a month. We set up a new server and rebuilt all the Windows machines. And so in the Citrix environment, we had all fresh installs and we thought the problem went away. It was gone for a month. And now it's back, but not as happening as often. But the fact that it came back still is puzzling. Now, it could be related to some other software we have. We have this corporate software called Trellix, and that's kind of like the software that prevents you from installing malware and other things. So it's always monitoring the file system and scanning things, and I think it has root access.
Ooh.
So it would have the ability to delete files. I don't know if it's false triggering on an LDB file and killing it.
That's certainly a possibility.
Have you asked them?
My company has 50,000 people. It's hard to get to the right level of person to to talk to. I have submitted a ticket. I'll say that.
Maybe a whitelist or something.
Yeah, I was hoping it would be something simple like that. Maybe they could disable it on these machines, scale it back some.
Right. Oh, the fun.
Well, sorry we don't have better answers for you, but I will consult with the Access team on this particular case and get
Yeah, I
back
would
to you.
appreciate that. If it started around the same time I heard about the bug where Access wasn't closing.
Oh, new version.
But we didn't experience that problem on our network with Access not closing, and that bug has been fixed now, right?
Yeah, it is. Now I'm assuming you're on the semi-annual enterprise channel and not the
Correct.
current channel. Okay.
Yeah, like a 6-month channel.
Okay. Good. All right, Ben. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. Any comments or any other help desk issues? Please let us know. Anybody else have an issue with Access they'd like to consult with us on before we go? All right. Well, thank you very much, Steve. That's been a really good presentation. I appreciate you helping out with that. Please join us next month where I'll have another MVP, Azure MVP, Roy. He will be presenting an IoT solution that we recently worked on together where thousands of sensors and hundreds of plants around the world are sending data to Azure. And we're going to be talking about the architecture, the platform, our Microsoft SQL Server play a pivotal role with that. The cell phone modems that the client was using originally when working, and then we switched to a new one. Just a fascinating project on how you can connect bolt on a device to an existing machine, have it collect data, and send that through a cell phone network back to Azure. So please join us for that. That will be on the second Tuesday of the month in December. This has been Juan Soto, your host. Again, if you were seeing this video on YouTube, please consider joining us live and checking the schedule calendar at AccessUserGroups.org. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everyone who's been here today. So long, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
I think.